Welcome back. Good to see you. Also, welcome to everyone on the lawn and at the Argus Theater and far and wide. We're delighted that you're with us. I'm just going to make a few quick announcements before we bring out our guests. Please mark your calendars. I hate to move us forward, but for next year, our dates are Saturday, July 18th to Monday the 20th. So if you can, come back and see us again. We'd love having you. We have comment cards in the back of the pavilion. You're welcome to take them and write a few words for us. We'll also send you a survey, and we hope you'll fill it out. We really do listen to everything that you say. It's very helpful in our organization and in the programming. I may have forgotten to mention the community library, Jenny Emery Davidson and Martha Williams yesterday. Yeah. They are just such an important resource to Ketchum and Sun Valley, and they hold 2 talks each year to bookend the conference. They're going to have Ruth Reichel tomorrow evening, and I think that's probably sold out, but you can stream it if you would like to. Anyway, we're delighted to be partnering with them. And speaking of resources, I, of course, want to thank our local bookstores, Iconoclast Books at Chapter 1. Yes. I know you all agree that there is little that is more vital than having libraries and bookstores in your community. So it's just fantastic, yes. We owe debt of gratitude to Boise State University. They're operating our on-site bookstore out there. Now, yeah. And neither the Writers' Conference nor Boise State take any revenue for the book sales. They all go into the BSU Scholarship Fund, which has raised more than $120,000 since 2016 and is helping to fund 2 fellows who are participating in our program this year. It's great. Everybody wins. I also want to thank Nina Tooley and the Sun Valley Company for partnering with us and helping us in our efforts to create a more sustainable campus by reducing waste and supporting local conservation. They told me 5 minutes ago that yesterday they composted 2,500 pounds just from the lunch alone, which they said is the weight of a small compact car. And all of that will eventually come back and fortify the landscaping of the resort. So we are just delighted by their good work. Yeah. Such a good family. Okay, that's it. Now, it's my pleasure to bring back John. He's going to introduce our next conversation. Thanks, you guys.
One of the bravest acts in literature as in life is the act of radical empathy. I take that phrase from COLUM McCANN himself. It is the founding impulse of his global nonprofit storytelling initiative, Narrative 4, which I urge you to learn more about. And it is the founding impulse, I would say, in what he has enacted in all of his award-winning books. Most recently, Let the Great World Spin, which won the National Book Award, TransAtlantic, Apeirogon. More recently, his book of nonfiction with Diane Foley, American Mother, and now in his brilliant new novel, Twist. And it is my great pleasure. I've admired him for years. I'm happy to call him my friend. He's going to be in conversation with our own Jeffrey Brown, senior arts correspondent at PBS and a longtime advisor of the conference. Thanks so much.
Hello, everyone. You know, I have been on this stage for more than 10 years now, and every year there are more plants. There's something growing out of your head there, all this. It's nice to be back here, nice to see you all, and I ask Column's indulgence to say one quick thing, because I do feel as a kind of family member of this conference. These are strange times. I just want to acknowledge, even this week that we're here, because of what's happening in Washington and around the country, and so many of you have come up to me, and I've had this conversation, a version of this conversation. It's great to see you. We love your work. We love your program. And then there's a pause. Do you still have a job? Now, that's not normal in my life. I don't know if that's normal in your life, but I thank everyone for the concern. I thank everyone for the love. And yes, I still have a job, and here we go, okay? So, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but why don't we start with Twist?
Okay.
Twist starts with this. You know, sometimes you talk about a novel, and it's almost too easy a question to say, where did this start? But with Twist, it starts with this central metaphor, which I think everyone can understand, of the underwater cables that hold all of the information in our lives, or a lot of it. Talk about those cables.
I suppose the impulse is to talk about how we are so connected and disconnected at the exact same time, and how these two truths sort of come into opposition with to one another. But I was astounded when I found out that 95% of the world's intercontinental information bounces on the bottom of our sea floors. And that means, you know, when we get translated into, our emails and everything else gets translated into light, and there are billion of pulses of light per second, traveling in the bottom of the seafloor, in some of the darkest areas known to humankind, places where no human has actually been, that all our voices are traveling along the seafloor. I thought it was a wonderful metaphor for where we happen to be right now. I do believe that we're living in broken times. It seems to me that part of the shattering is very prominent because we're living in the exponential age, and things are happening so quickly. And then when we try to repair things, things fall apart. So I went out to write a novel about the repair of the internet deep at sea. What I didn't realize that it would become about the repair and the sabotage of the internet deep at sea at the same time. It was an incredible journey for me to go and to discover all these people, and there are people behind these cables, also to find out how vulnerable we are with those particular cables.
So you are, I mean, the cables are metaphor, but this is real. So this is the people, this is a part adventure story about the people who are literally at sea, metaphorically and really, and the cables break.
Yes.
When the cables break, these people are, this is their work.
Right.
So it's partly a novel of work.
Right.
It's about going out to, as you say, repair.
Yes.
So you love that part about the work. You love that part about what people do.
Yeah. Many years ago, I wrote a novel called This Side of Brightness, which is about the building of the subway tunnels in New York. And that was really fascinating to me. I remember, because I went down to investigate the position of the homeless people who were living in the subway tunnels. And I remember being there and thinking, just one afternoon, it sort of hit me like that. It's like, somebody built these things. And how were they built? It turned out that it was Irish and African Americans together in the first integrated union in the United States built these subway tunnels together. And there were some spectacular accidents in building them. I was shocked that people hadn't really written about this all that much. I was also shocked with Twist that people, to find out how many people are actually behind the internet, because we tend to think of it as some celestial thing. I used to think my emails went up in the air, you know, and sort of rained down darkly upon the world. But what I didn't know is that they were all flying under the sea, which is, it's magical and scary at the exact same time.
I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned this side of brightness, which is about the building of the tunnels. In Let the Great World Spin, it's partly about the building of the Twin Towers and the skyscrapers.
Right.
TransAtlantic, about the cross-Atlantic flight. You love, you're like the bard of infrastructure. I hadn't thought of it, but you love the way the way stuff works.
Well, we talked about this before. I'm privileged to have been interviewed by Jeff just a month or so ago, and did a beautiful piece about Narrative 4. But then we also talked about how things connect, and it seems to me I said to you that Vallejo said that mystery joins things together.
Yeah.
And so people ask me, so why do you write about these things? Why do you write about people who are on tight ropes? Why do you write about tunnels? You know, why do you write about cables? And I think the best answer to this, and maybe to nearly all other questions that come my way, especially these days, is I don't know. Now, I mean that in the sense that it's a really good answer because I don't know, but also I think it's, for these particular times, I think we're scared to say, I don't know, and we have these like worlds of certainty that are all around us that say, come into the room if you look like me, or you vote like me, or you sound like me, but otherwise stay outside. And I'm really interested in disrupting that certainty. And there's two ends to things: the A to B of the cable, or the A to Z of the cables or the tunnels. But then I began thinking about it more after our interview, which we did in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Why am I doing all this? And it struck me that maybe it's because I'm an immigrant.
After our interview?
Yeah, I know.
We should have told you. So the good stuff came after we were done talking?
See, this is what you inspire.
Jeez, I know, but I need it on television.
Yeah.
All right, tell them now.
No, maybe it's because I'm always trying to go home. I'm an immigrant and an emigrant, and so when I live in New York. When I'm in New York, I think, and I say I'm going home, it means I'm going home to Dublin. And when I'm in Dublin and I say I'm going home to New York. And there's flux and this, I think part of me thinks that you emigrate in order to remember. You leave a place in order that it become even more real for you and more powerful for you. And some of that has to clue in with stories and storytelling as well.
I mean, some of this came out in your talk the other night with Salman about, he was talking about his 3 cities.
Yes.
You also, I guess, what is it for you, 2 cities? But you have lived much of your adult life in the United States, in New York.
Yes. And Salman, who's here with us today, by the way, he's been a huge part of my writing life, as much as anything else. Looking at him, I remember him talking very early on about the international mongrels of the world and people who move and so on. And I recognized what I wanted to do in so much of his work. So I've been moving a lot and writing about a lot of different things. And I do say to my writing students, people tell you that you should write what you know. And I say, well, that's not the way I want my writing students to do it. I think you should write towards what you want to know. Sometimes even you can say, write what you don't know, which is logically, philosophically impossible, right? You can't write what you don't know. But if you write towards that place, you discover things that you knew but you weren't entirely aware of. So I've done lots of things. I've written about lots of things that at first I didn't know a whole lot about. I wrote a book called dancer, and I'm Irish. I can't dance. Certainly not in the way. Certainly not any ballet. But I didn't know anything about dance before I embarked on the novel. But I spent 4 years getting to know the world of dance, which was kind of fascinating and wonderful. And I feel very lucky because I think it was Disraeli said something like, if you want to know something about anything, write a book about it. But I think, you know, in relation to, say, Twist, I didn't know anything about how emails get translated. I didn't know anything about binary codes. I didn't know anything about how this light travels in these tubes that are no bigger than a garden hose, you know, all the way across the world. So if I have a video that I send, say, to my 98-year-old mum in Dublin, that is traveling on the you know, the bottom of the ocean floor and goes into her house in Clonkeen Road in Dublin in 0.0006 of a second. And that sort of miraculous stuff is what I'm interested in trying to find out about and to learn about.
But that stuff, as you call it, is the way toward a very human story, which is both a human story about individuals, your characters, but always, and twist again, into some much larger aspects of our lives.
Right.
In this case, as you were saying, the isolation that so many of us feel, the connectedness of our lives, but therefore the unconnectedness or the isolation because we are looking at those phones.
Right.
And that becomes the story here.
Yeah, I do believe that the tiny becomes epic, and that the local can speak to the universal. But I don't think you're ever going to change any hearts or minds with statistics and or facts. I do think that when the human element comes in, and this is part of what Narrative 4 is about bringing young people to tell personal stories to one another.
Tell them a little bit about what Narrative 4 is. It's young people.
Well, he did a marvelous job, and if you go to the internet, you look at PBS, and there's a great segment. I was really deeply grateful for it about Narrative 4, because Narrative 4 is a huge part of my life. Basically, it's a non-profit organization that gets young people together to exchange stories with one another, and then charges them with the idea that they go out and do something to change with things within their communities. One simple example of this is we brought young people from the South Bronx together with young people from Eastern Kentucky. Thank you. Because it does sound a little bizarre. Like, these kids are black and or immigrant. These kids are white and or Cherokee. These kids are traditionally blue. These kids are traditionally red. These kids are urban. These kids are rural. And then when you get them together in a room, guess what? They're terrified. Completely terrified at first. And I've seen grown young men from the South Bronx cry in a corner because they think that these people won't understand them. But then when they begin to tell personal stories to one another, they suddenly realize something about themselves. That, say, for example, the young girl in the South Bronx who wears a hijab, and she's talking with the boy who drives his pickup truck down through the holler in Kentucky. And he suddenly realizes that beneath her hijab, she's got AirPods in there, and she's listening to Beyonce. And guess what he's been listening to? Beyonce's country album, you know, and when he's down the holler. And suddenly the world is a little messy and not as simple and as divided as they thought it was. And they're not quite as different as what they thought they could be. And then they get together and they start to explore one another. And it's that human connection. And this is the thing that I think we're missing, especially nowadays. Look, technology, we're talking about ideas that, have two truths to them. Technology is good, technology is bad. And we're connected and we're disconnected. The one force, I think, that goes through all of this and that can bring us together is the force of stories and storytelling. And when young people get a chance to not only tell their own story, but hear their story told back to them, and at the same time tell the story of someone else, that's when I think you have an opportunity to change the world. And we're in 42 countries now. We're basically in all the states. We've done work in Boise and other places. And we've seen, when we study the schools where we go in, the test scores go up, absentee levels go down, empathy levels, go up. And some people say this is, oh yeah, storytelling. It's a bit twee, right? Like, it's very, like, I was talking with Salman about this actually the other day, like it seems sort of sentimental to some people. But I would love to take any cynic and sit with them, especially those squinty-eyed cynics who sit in the corner of a party, the ones that I'm talking about. And I can go toe-to-toe with them on cynicism. But then basically they'll say to me, well, you're sentimental. You think that there's some light out there. But I would like to turn the tables, because I think the cynic is sentimental. I think the cynic lives in the cloud of his or her own understanding, and they refuse to journey outside their own experience. That seems to me to be the perfect definition of being sentimental, being unable to journey outside of yourself. So if you really want to piss a cynic off, call them sentimental. Because they think that, oh no, that's not, and it's a good way to change the world.
But the key element, I think, in narrative 4, and I want everyone to understand, it's not just storytelling.
Right.
It's telling the other story back.
That's right.
So if we're talking to each other and I say, my name is so-and-so, and here's what I do, and here's what most troubles me in the world, or here's what's most important, then what happens is it's a kind of story acting, or you would then be me, right? And as me, tell my story.
Yeah.
And then there was discussion here on the stage yesterday about sympathy versus empathy.
Right.
Then it's empathy, right? It's because I am becoming you, and I'm not only sort of talking to you, but I am being you and feeling your feelings and living a little bit of your biography.
Yes. I spoke to this a little bit about this the other day, but I think it's worth repeating. The brain, when you tell your own story, is, it's like a circus. When the scientists look at your brain and you're telling a story, there's all sorts of lights going off, and all these neurons are meeting other neurons, and it's really quite a spectacular thing. When it's like an artwork, a moving Rorschach, if you will. But when you tell somebody else's story, it's like 10 carnivals all at once. You're accessing memory, you're accessing imagination, you're accessing these deeply empathetic parts of your own being. So not only are you telling somebody else's story, but you're accessing your own history in all sorts of ways. And, and I believe that this sort of act where these young people tell somebody else's story makes the world more nuanced. And then what we do is we ask them to go out and do something within their community that speaks to whatever the story exchange was about. So, for example, the kids in Kentucky started opioid awareness groups, because all their stories were about the young people and their brothers and sisters who died from opioid abuse. The kids in the South Bronx went to Kohler Hospital, where all these gunshot victims were, and started a group, working with a group called Reality Poets, all these gunshot victims, and they started exchanging stories with one another. And you know what? It gives me optimism for the world.
Is it, you know, you have been doing one more thing on Narrative 4. You've been doing it for a long time now, and it ties to the subject of twist as well. But is it harder? Are you finding it harder to get young people to want to participate, to tell their story, to even know their story, to be willing to connect to others because of what we've been talking about, the lack of connection, the technology?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes. Look, these young people have gone through, we've all gone through it too, but these young people have gone through an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And I can't tell you how many young people I meet in these schools when we do these exchanges who say to me, but I don't have a story. And then they're stunned, because one of the things that I would get them to tell their stories, that think of something in your life that you'd bury in the ground, and that years later, if somebody picked it up out of the ground and listened to that particular story, they would know the essence of you. And something clicks in their mind, and they often want to talk about grandfathers and grandmothers and people in their lives. And then suddenly, they realize that they have a story, and they're shocked. Oh, I'm valuable, because this is all about value and feeling meaningful. So in this epidemic of meaninglessness, if they can find something meaningful going on in their lives, it means they can go out into their communities and disrupt some of the terrible shite that is happening around us these days. And they're not quite as isolated anymore as what they were before they told somebody else's story.
So let's go back to a little bit of the COLUM McCANN story for everybody. You've told me this in the past about coming to this country as a young fellow, and you did an epic journey, right? Traveled across the country.
Yeah.
Tell them, who were you at that point, and what were you looking for? What were you seeking?
I had a pretty cushy job in Dublin, where I was working for a newspaper, and I'd been working since I was 16. But I always wanted to go out and try to write a novel. So I wanted to be like Kerouac, right? So I came to the United States, I bought a typewriter, I bought a roll of paper, just like Kerouac, and I thought, I'm going to do this. And I was in Cape Cod, and I was there for a summer. And at the end of the summer, I had about 1.5 feet of gobbledygook. That was no good because the A key and the E key didn't work properly. And I had to look at myself and said, well, what is it, you know, and what can you do? And I sort of realized that I didn't know enough, and I needed to get out into the world. And so I ended up taking a bicycle across the United States. And I came through Ketchum, and Pat Millington, is Pat Millington here? Some of you know Pat Millington. Is she here? She saw me on the road in Ketchum, right by Pickaboo General Store, and she looked at me. Now, I had long hair. I had hair.
I had long hair, he says. Okay, yeah.
I had hair. She looked at me and, like, I had 2 pannier bags on the back, 2 pannier bags on the front, a sleeping bag, a tent. And she's like, what in the world are you doing? I was looking at these horses. I said, I'm taking a bicycle across the United States. And she said, come to my house tonight. Come to dinner. Which I did, and they actually put me up, and they gave me a room in the house. But I'd been so used to being on the road at that stage, I'd been more than a year on the road, that I couldn't sleep in a bed. So I took my sleeping bag outside and by her swimming pool and slept out during the evening. But can I just say this?
Of course.
I met all sorts of spectacular people.
Yeah.
No matter where I went, whether it was in Boston or down in Georgia or in Florida or in Mexico. And one of my big questions for myself right now, because this happened in 1986, 86 and 87, is if I took a bicycle today and followed even the exact same route, although obviously I'm 40 years older and all of these things that are going on, but would it be the same country?
Well, that's exactly what I want to ask you. I mean, what was that country then to you? What did you find in that America?
You know, I had a couple of times when I had a few bad things happen to me. You know, in Tennessee, I was knocked off the road and had a few little flare-ups. But there was incredible generosity and an incredible openness and a desire. So people would come up to me and say, "Oh, look at you, what are you doing?" Within 5 minutes, they would be telling me their own story. And I think now that sort in a way they were vicariously becoming writers, because they were giving me their story. I would take it down into my belly, and then I would take it down the road. Also, they would tell me some of the most profoundly intimate of things, because they knew there would be no repercussions, because I was just passing through. And also they would take me into their houses often and or sleep in their backyards, because I wasn't going to go run off with the furniture on my back. I had no getaway car, you know, go down the road plodding on a bicycle. A secret part of me, Jeff, wants to think that it's still the same country. Another part of me is really dealing with the fact that I mightn't be able to go to this. You don't step into the same river twice. Right. And that upsets me. I would love to be able to say that I could go down to southern Georgia, the Okefenokee, and not have you know, people mess with me in some way, or maybe not understand what I was doing, or assign a political value to the fact that I'm, you know, on a bicycle or something like that. I mean, you guys know. Is it the same country, or is it not? It is. Okay, it is. That gives me great hope to think that it possibly could be.
Of course, you're a different person too. And as you said, you came here. I mean, it's interesting. It was Jack Kerouac, right?
Yeah.
So you knew this country as a young man. You knew it through literature, through popular culture, I assume.
Yeah.
And something drew you, and clearly that stuck because you have made this your home.
Yes, and there was always that thing in Ireland. You know, most Irish families. I come from a family, 5 kids, and I have a sister in London. I have another brother who's in Portland, Oregon, and of the 5 of us, 3 went away. That was a normal sort of thing. But for me personally, it was always the idea to go west. I did not want to go east towards England, and I had this sort of mythical idea. There's a land in Irish mythology called Tir na Nog, which means the country of the young. And in the Irish imagination, certainly as a child, I always thought that Tir na Nog was America, right? And that, you know, there was some sort of place where you could go and you could be sort of mythical in a way. So that was part of the journey that I took on. And also I liked it here, and my wife Alison is here. She's here somewhere. Hi, Alison. So I met her, and that's another one of the reasons why I'm still here. But I have enjoyed being here. I do feel like I'm a person of 2 countries.
You do,
yeah.
Still. Yeah.
I carry 2 passports. I will tell you this, though. This is kind of like when I go and I have to show my U.S. passport, I still always hold my Irish passport over the U.S. passport until the last minute. So, and then I do have questions like, are you an American writer now, or I'll always and only ever be an Irish writer, even though I've lived here most of my life. I don't know what that means. I don't want to sit on the couch and sort of analyze that, yeah, I just feel Irish and want to be Irish.
Although if you ever have the experiences I have to go to a good Irish pub with COLUM in New York, that's a good thing, you know. So hold on to his Irish there, because he pretty much knows every Irishman, and every Irishman in New York knows him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's not necessarily a good thing for my liver.
So, okay, so let's come back now, circle back to it's not just twist, but this idea of repair is becomes so fundamental to your writing,
right,
especially in recent books, and especially in the brilliant and sort of painfully still relevant Apeirogon, which I want to talk about the Middle East.
Yeah.
The book you did with Diane Foley as well.
Right.
But this, and you referred to it earlier, this idea of taking these small and building the epic from it. But that epic story for you now, clearly, although I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as a reader, it looks like it is repairing more and more this world of ours. In Apeirogon, it was the story, the true story, right, of two, they became friends, an Israeli and a Palestinian, trying to somehow bridge the unbridgeable.
Right.
In a situation which now, you know, since you've written it, has only become more horrific.
So the one thing I want to say to anybody who's read Apeirogon, the most important thing that I can say to you now, well, first of all, thank you for reading it. But secondly, Rami and Bassam are still the best of friends. This is very, very, very important. And they believe that the essence of their message has become even more important post-October 7th and still with all of this stuff that's unfolding horrifically at their feet. Because Rami's in Jerusalem and Bassam is in Jericho. And they call each other every day, and they talk to each other every day. They try to meet with one another. But the essence of their message is this. Look, we don't have to love each other. We don't even have to like one another, though we hope that we could. But we absolutely must, fundamentally must understand one another, or else we're in serious, serious, serious trouble. So they believe that this understanding comes from the fact that they get a chance to tell their stories and that people get to listen to their stories. The day I met them, which was in 2015, I walked into this room in Beit Jala, which is just outside, it's just outside Jerusalem, Bethlehem. And I walked into this room. There's this Israeli man down here, this Palestinian man here, and I thought, okay, whatever, kumbaya. And then when they told me the stories of how they lost their daughters, it's not embarrassing to me to say that I was in floods of tears. And then they handed me this green napkin at the end of our meeting and it said on it, most profoundly, I think, harness the power of your grief. Sloane Crosley was talking about grief today and the things that can rise up out of your grief. But I went back to New York and I thought, I'd like to write about them. But look, I'm Irish, I'm middle-aged, I'm a white male. How can I write about Israel and Palestine? So I started trying to write something else, but I kept being tugged back. So I called Rami and Bassam and I said, listen, guys, would you be okay if I wrote something about you? And they said, yeah. And I said, but listen, you don't understand. I make stuff up. I'm a novelist. And they're like, no, that's fine. And I said, okay. And then they said to me this beautiful thing. They said, if you can capture just a portion of our grief and bring it out to other people, you will have done us a mitzvah. And there's an equivalent Arabic word for that then too. You will have done us a huge favor just by telling our stories. And so it was really scary for me to go into one of the world's, most conflicted areas and think, I have a responsibility here. I have a responsibility to my characters, Rami and Bassam, because they're real. But I also have a responsibility to history and to their grief and to their daughters, who, while I was writing the novel, they sort of sat on my shoulder. It wasn't that one sat on the left all the time, one sat on the right. They switched positions for me. And I fell in love with these two girls who are gone from us, but came back, and they come back for Rami and Bassam. They're alive. These two girls are alive. Was it because, I knew conflict in my own country growing up? Maybe that was something that attracted me to it. But really, essentially, I have to tell you, because I think these two brave fathers need to honor the heartbreak of the world. And they do so. And I do think that it's the job of the writer to go in and excavate that. And maybe to disrupt people at the same time.
It's interesting to me now, though, I mean, from a writing perspective, because we were talking earlier about your interest in real stuff, even infrastructure. In that case, it was extremely real. These are two real people with daughters, both lost tragically, and a very real situation. But as you said, you make stuff up.
Right.
So how did you approach that material while being true to the truth, but also telling your own story?
Right. You have to balance this stuff. The secret about writers, a secret thing that you guys, some of you know, some of you are writers, that writers don't really know what they're doing. Yeah. They just hope that you're going to get it right. And you go into this territory and you try to, look at, you gather the facts, but the really important thing is that you get at the emotion. So Faulkner, in his 1950 Nobel address, talked about what the writer did was talked about the human heart in conflict with itself. And that the essence of the human heart is these issues of love, pride, pity, sacrifice, compassion, and so on. These are the ineffable things. These are the things around which it is impossible to put a fact or a statistic. So you go in, and I think you embrace the mystery of all of those things, and you just try to be as honest as possible. And you just hope to God that you get it right. One of the things about being a writer, I think, is having the virtue of stamina, desire, and perseverance, and the ability to fail. And I do think that one of the great things, whenever I have students or talk to people, like, go as hard and as far and as difficult as possible. And get ready to embark on a journey where, if you fail, it's gonna be okay.
So you wrote that book.
I was terrified. I was terrified.
Yeah, but you wrote that book how many years ago?
Apeirogon.
Yeah.
So I went there in 2015, and it came out in 2020.
Right. So here we are 5 years later. Mm-hmm. How do you see things now?
Yeah, well, I mean, a part of me says, well, that book did absolutely nothing. What was the point in doing all of that? But, it was a drop in a drop in a drop in a drop in the ocean. And obviously it didn't change anything or anyone. But then I have people come up to me and say, that book changed my whole relationship to how I think about the Middle East. And that buoys me in all sorts of ways. Am I incredibly sad, just like Rami and Bassam are incredibly sad about what's happening over there? Are they angry? Yes. But I take heart from what Bassam says, the Palestinian, who spent 7 years in prison, in Israeli prisons, and then went on to study the Holocaust, right? Which is amazing. Think about it. But he says, Who could have believed that 20 years after the Holocaust, that there would be an Israeli embassy in Bonn and that there would be a German embassy in Tel Aviv? Who could have believed that there would be, out of all that desolation, that there would come some sort of solace? In my own case, I think a lot about what happened in Northern Ireland. Because if you'd have seen the 21-year-old boy who was in Ketchum and you'd have asked him, is there ever going to be peace in Northern Ireland in 1986? No way. I sit here tonight, or this afternoon, 27 years of peace. It's shaky at times, but we have 27 years of peace in Ireland. So the impossible can occur, and there are so many instances of this. And so what Rami and Bassam are waiting for, they feel that they have to do this and continue to do it. One of the heartbreaking things is that they've seen their sons go into this, the peace, talking about peace and dialogue. They now see their grandsons. Now, they didn't want this to happen. They don't think that they will see peace in their lifetime. But they know that eventually it must happen, because it happens everywhere.
So that it leads to, and I'll make this my last question for now, and then we'll open it up. But it raises, and you just sort of said, what does a book do, right? Yeah. What did that book do? A drop of nothing, or maybe something.
Right.
And I'm interested, going back to the conversation you had with Salman, the writer in the world.
Yeah.
As much as any writer that I know, you extend yourself into the world. We talked a little bit about Narrative 4.
Right.
That's just, that is a major project, but that's just one of the things you do. And these books extend yourself into the world. So what compels you into the world like that? Whereas you are a person that has to sit at home a lot of the time, like all the writers here, and write, but you get yourself out in the world. What compels that?
I don't know. But I will say this. There was a 15 or 16-year-old girl who woke up one morning in Sweden, and she decided that she wasn't happy with what was going on in the world. So she walked out of class one Friday afternoon, and she was laughed at. But next week, 2 or 3 of her classmates came along. By the end of the year, every student her age in Sweden walked out of class. And then she started a whole movement for climate awareness across the world. I know there are young people in the schools here in the States and in Ireland and Africa, countries in Africa, who have that ability. So I think maybe with a story, or whether it's as a novelist or whether as an activist, which I consider myself to be with Narrative 4, there's going to be a tiny seed that gets thrown in that direction, and someone else with a lot more energy than me and a lot more imagination than me will come along, and they will grow something good out of it. It's like, yeah, I know that it seems spectacularly naive at times, especially given the body of evidence that we have when we look at our newspapers today. But I do think there is this idea that you can have to be a good optimist, you have to be a good pessimist too. Mm-hmm. And I actually think the very best optimists will be pessimists right to the core, and then they'll say, but so what? The pessimism isn't good enough. You gotta acknowledge all the darkness, and then if you write a story that changes things, well and good. I know there are writers who've changed things for me, so that's almost enough.
All right, very nice. Okay, so okay, so we can open this up to right here in the front. Raise
your hands, please.
Right in the front is I see one, and then
One question here, and then.
Thank you. Much of your work, from Let the Great World Spin, Something I Witnessed, to Apeirogon, explores the power of radical empathy, often between people divided by culture, trauma, conflict. In a world increasingly shaped by algorithms and polarization, what do you believe is the role and the responsibility of fiction in helping us imagine each other more generously?
That's a beautiful question, and I think within the question is the actual answer, the generosity that comes about with imagination. One of the things about fiction is that I don't believe there is a difference between fiction and non-fiction. I think that these worlds sort of move into one another, and what really it's all about stories and storytelling. And but I do think that this empathy that we're talking about is enormously important, and it's dangerous, and it's muscular, and it's it's all of these things, because stories can take away your identity, stories can take away your country, stories can take away your house. They can do. There's a lot of violence that goes on with people who have changed the story that is going on. And I think the writer and the reader has to be in opposition to those people who want to make us fear one another. And I do think that when you get into literature, you're outside of yourself. And then being outside of yourself is one of the most important acts that you can do. That the world is all of those people that we have never yet met. and I also do believe that there is an act of civil disobedience that comes about by saying other people really do matter. And guess what? Those people in Jericho are no different to my people here in Jerusalem. And you get in a lot of trouble about it. Believe it or believe it not, Bassam can't get a visa to come to the United States, but neither can Rami, and that's the thing that shocks people. They're both being blocked by not just the current administration, but the previous administration too, from coming to the United States to talk about resolution. And there's a lot of people make a lot of money from teaching us that we should fear one another. And I think radical empathy comes about when we begin to break those borders down. Thank you for your question.
Thanks. Other questions? Question up here in the middle, towards the top. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent discussion. Earlier you had some comments on undersea cables and what that transmits. In December, there was a commercial ship that dragged an anchor cutting an undersea cable in the Baltic Sea.
That was my marketing campaign.
I thought it might have been. Anyhow, and Finland was particularly injured in that. And this comment is from myself, Arthur, last name, if you want to write it down, Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if you talk to military experts, of whom we have many here at the conference, they will tell you that the next major war, there is an idea that the next major war is going to at least begin underwater. Because it's all going to be about information and disinformation. You cut those cables, you cut the arteries, you cut the veins going into a country, and then you can shape the information. There are Russian ships, they sound like a conspiracy nut, there are Russian ships and there are Chinese ships that are in the Baltics right now. They are mapping where the cables go. They are also looking at at where they can disrupt the information. And we're not really aware of this threat it's actually an existential threat. And I can tell you that there are landing stations all over the world, and I've been at them. Landing station is a place where the cable comes in to, from the transatlantic. They are completely unprotected. I've been in Long Island, New Jersey, Ireland, in South Africa and other places where I have walked into landing stations and stood above the manhole cover where all the voices in the world are coming in. And if I had a crowbar with me, and I'm not in the habit of carrying a crowbar, but I would be able to pry that manhole cover up and touch the wires that are coming in. Now, if I can do that, can you imagine what somebody who wanted to disrupt the world could actually do? And it's something we've got to be more aware of. So thank you, Mr. Dublin, whose name I'll never forget.
Thanks.
There was someone...
Other questions? Yeah, over here on the right.
The two books that were kind of circling around my brain when I read Twist were The Great Gatsby and The Heart of Darkness. Were those at all in your thinking?
Absolutely. You should have been doing the marketing campaign too. Because, yes, Heart of Darkness in particular, this boat, the cable gets disrupted off the west coast of Africa. The reason the cable breaks is because of climate change and the Congo River floods. It sends a landslide out into the ocean. This is based on a true story. The landslide goes over 400 miles out to sea. The cable gets caught and the cable snaps. Now, what do we think of when we think of people on a ship in West Africa and the Congo River? We obviously think of Joseph Conrad and what is the new colonialism? Does the new colonialism lie within those actual cables? Because guess what? Not only does Google and the other companies, do they own my information that's traveling in those tubes, they also own the tubes themselves. And that's kind of scary in certain ways. So certainly the Heart of Darkness.
And we should say even the protagonist is Conway.
That's right.
For a nod to Joseph Conrad, of course.
Exactly.
And for fans of the film Apocalypse Now, that enters the story as well.
That's
right.
That's exactly right. Thank you. And then the other thing, The Great Gatsby, well, it's one of the great books of our time. But I was conscious of my narrator, Anthony Fennell, having a little bit of a Nick Carraway voice, In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some information, that sort of... and it's also a narrative that's seemingly quite, it's a chronological book, which is unusual for me, and it's apparently simple. But it's also about a man who is kind of broken, being obsessed by another man who's involved with a love affair that he doesn't quite fully understand. And that man, I'm not giving anything away, because my main character, or one of the main characters, dies on the first page. And so Gatsby, we have hints from the very first, I think the second page in Great Gatsby that Gatsby's story is going to be this tragedy. So both of those books were very important to me. The other literary thing that was important to me was the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and that beautiful. Powerful poem, that finished with it talks about the sea till human voices wake us and we drown. Which, as a complete aside, can I just say, for next Christmas, not only do I want you to buy a copy of Twist for someone, but no, for next Christmas, if you have kids and or grandkids, what I think you should do, if you really want a nice present, is to get them to learn a poem for you. It's the best thing that happened. And our son, John Michael, one Christmas, learned the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, the whole 420 lines. And it was really profoundly beautiful thing. But you can start with a good poem to start with to get your grandkids like say if they're 5 or 6 years old, is The Road Less Traveled. You know, it's an easy poem. It's rhythmic, but it's profoundly good as well. So I just solved your Christmas problems.
Colum, Jeff,
All right,
thank you so
Colum
much.
McCann, thank you very much.
Jeffrey Brown, thank you. Amazing.
Don't forget your hat.
I know.
Colum will be